You were good to them, maybe too good. You gave people the benefit of the doubt. You believed silence would speak for itself. That loyalty given would be loyalty returned. That your patience would somehow be enough to inspire change in them, but it didn't instead. They took that silence as weakness. They crossed the line not once, not twice, but in ways that slowly chipped away at your trust. And you let it slide. You thought being mature meant being tolerant. That real strength was in staying calm, staying kind. But you were wrong, because some people don't respond to kindness. They exploit it. They stretch it. They test its limits until you finally understand something Machiavelli knew a long time ago. Mercy has boundaries, and when someone crosses them, what comes next isn't cruelty out of malice, it's cruelty as a necessity, a survival instinct, not rage, not revenge, just a cold, precise correction. This is the law of necessary cruelty. It's not about being ruthless for the sake of it. It's about being strategic, about protecting what's left of your self-respect when kindness fails. Because in the world Machiavelli lived in, the same one we live in today, people don't respond to your good heart. They respond to pressure. And when mercy becomes a liability, cruelty becomes your last option. This is where most people get it wrong. They think cruelty means yelling, punishing, burning bridges. But that's not what we're talking about here. True cruelty, the kind Machiavelli described, is quiet, calculated, surgical. It doesn't lash out. It removes. It corrects. It resets the power dynamic without saying a word. Because the sad truth is, kindness, when not matched, is invisible. People don't see the effort. They don't appreciate the restraint. They only see what they can get away with. So when you stop explaining, when you stop giving them rope they'll only use to hang you with, you start playing a different game. A colder one. A quieter one. One where cruelty isn't an accident, it's a weapon. Sharpened by every chance you gave them and every warning they ignored. Machiavelli said it best. A ruler who is too merciful lets disorder spread. But a leader who knows when to act, who knows when enough is enough, they don't cause suffering. They prevent worse suffering from ever happening again. That's the paradox. Cruelty, when used with intention, isn't about harm, it's about containment. It's how you draw the line when words no longer work. When people mistake your silence for softness. When they think they can keep taking from you without cost, and when that moment comes. The first rule is this: don't explain your change, enforce it. Look at how power actually shifts. Between people, the person who always forgives becomes a joke. The one who always listens gets talked over. The one who avoids conflict loses everything they built. Because people don't respect your kindness until they believe it's a choice, not a default. That's the key. You don't need to be cruel all the time, but you do need to be capable of it, just enough for people to know it's there, quiet, buried, but real. Because if they don't think you'll ever use it, they'll never stop pushing you. And not every insult deserves a reaction. But the ones that do, they must be answered with something cold, unmistakable, something that makes them think twice before trying again. Machiavelli once wrote, "If you must harm someone, do it in such a way that you need not fear their revenge." In other words, don't do it halfway. Don't dip your toe into cruelty. Either don't touch it or commit to it fully. Because when you decide that kindness is no longer your path, there's no going back to who you were. You become the consequence they never saw coming. You start with silence. Then you move to distance. Then you move strategically. You don't announce your decisions. You don't make a scene. You just let them wonder. Did they even notice what I did? Until it's too late. And no, this isn't about being heartless. This is about being precise. Because cruelty has rules. This isn't revenge. This is education. You're not trying to destroy someone. You're trying to destroy the dynamic that was slowly killing you. You're not punishing them for being who they are. You're punishing them for believing you'd always let it slide. Because every group has that one person everyone watches. And when someone disrespects you in public and you let it slide, you rate teaching everyone else. Dangerous lesson. You can cross this person. There are no consequences. But if you respond not with emotion, not with trauma, but with something colder, more decisive, a shift in tone so sharp the energy in the room changes. No one forgets that moment. They may not like you, but they'll respect you, because the kindest people in the world, they are not always the ones who get walked on. They're the ones who are kind, until they weren't. And that's the difference. Cruelty that comes from fear is weak, but cruelty that comes from restraint, that comes from watching, waiting, giving chances, only to be burned again, that cruelty is unforgettable. It marks people. It teaches them something no conversation ever could. It says, "This is what happens when you mistake my patience for a powerlessness." Because here's the thing. When mercy threatens your authority, Machiavelli says you must act, not with rage, not with noise, but with distance, with detachment, with finality. Because the cruelest thing you can do is not scream. It's to remove someone like they were never part of your life at all. You don't need to burn them. You just vanish. That's how silence becomes a statement. Let them talk. Let them wonder. Let them spin the story however they want. Your calm is your answer. Your absence is your power. Your refusal to fight back. That's what gets remembered. And when people ask what happened, you just say, "Nothing. I just moved differently." There's a strange kind of strength in saying nothing, in not defending yourself, in not explaining your reasons. Because in that silence, they begin to feel it. The shift, the cold, the absence of your warmth. They come with stillness, with a quiet so thick it makes the other person panic. Because they don't know what's coming next. They don't even know what they did exactly. That's the genius of Machiavelli's method. It's not about rage. They learn you won't do anything, that there are no boundaries, that you're safe to disrespect. And the moment you realize that your silence isn't being taken as grace, but as permission, that's when the cruelty begins. It's about disruption. You don't explain the consequences, you become the consequence. That's the difference between revenge and necessary cruelty. Revenge wants to be seen, wants to scream, wants to prove something. Necessary cruelty doesn't. It doesn't need witnesses. It doesn't need applause. It just needs to work. More often, it's a slow leak, 100 small insults, the jokes that cut a little too deep, the way they dismiss your opinions. You don't play your usual part in their comfort zone. You disrupt the rhythm they were so used to controlling. That's how cruelty operates in silence. You don't strike. You withdraw. Why? Because if you spread out the consequences, if you forgive again and again, people learn to expect it. It becomes predictable. It loses impact, and suddenly, they're left talking to their own guilt. The way they look at you when you speak, as if your words are background noise. You're not trying to destroy them. You're showing them they destroyed you. And now, there's no going back. As long as the disrespect is free, it will continue. And lost something they didn't think was ever at risk. And every time, you think, it's not that serious. I'll let it slide. And the cruelest moves, they don't come with yelling. This is what happens when silence encourages disrespect. The moment they take advantage one time too many. You don't explain. You don't debate. You cut. Because here's the truth Machiavelli understood better than anyone. The more they talk about you after being cut off, the more they reveal how much you meant. See, it's rarely one big betrayal. You remove the version of you they once had access to. The soft version, the generous one, the loyal one. And what's left? A version of you that's cold a dot sharper, more discerning. It forces them to go back in their minds and question everything. To replay every moment. To ask themselves, what did I miss? What did I do? But every time you let it slide, they learn something. Not loud, not dramatic, but surgical. You don't yell. You don't accuse. You don't tell them how you feel. Because the moment you start justifying your standards, you invite them to be debated. The way your name doesn't come up the same way. The way they used to matter to you, and now they don't. It only proves how deeply they felt the loss. That's the true punishment. You water them down. You turn your boundaries into suggestions. You just stop laughing. You become colder in the room. You speak less. You stop reacting the way they expect. Don't defend yourself. Don't tell your side. Don't try to prove who is right. This is how you reclaim power when words have failed. And here's where most people fall into the trap. They think being the bigger person means absorbing hit after hit, wound after wound, thinking, one day they'll see how patient I was. They won't. People don't respect repeated forgiveness. They exploit it. That's why Machiavelli wrote, injuries must be inflicted all at once. But when you respond just once decisively, sharply that punishment echoes. It teaches. It burns into memory. It doesn't just hurt. It changes behavior. They won't remember every kind thing you did. They won't remember every warning. But they will remember the moment they pushed too far. That's the kind of cruelty that works. Because it's not about pain, it's about perception. Here's the part people never say out loud. People only learn when the consequences outweigh the reward. So the moment they cross the line, and when they try to twist the narrative, when they say you overreacted, you don't respond. You let them talk. Your silence becomes evidence of your strength. Their noise becomes the evidence of their guilt. And when someone asks you what happened, you give them the most Machiavellian answer of all. Nothing really. I just moved differently. You don't defend. You don't explain. You don't justify. That's why cruelty must be final. You don't just remove them from your life, and when they finally notice the change and ask, is something wrong? You give them the coldest line of all. No, everything's fine. Because that ambiguity, that lack of drama, that stillness, that's what haunts people. That's not pettiness. That's psychology. Because now, your silence becomes a mirror they can't look away from. You didn't yell. You didn't curse. You didn't make a scene. You just became someone they no longer had access to. And that's the part that hurts most. It's not the punishment. It's the absence. The way the room feels different without your energy. The way others notice. And when they try to spin the story, let them. Because every word they say trying to make you the villain. You didn't destroy them. You left them with themselves. That's cruelty done right. It doesn't need to be repeated. It doesn't need to be loud. It just needs to linger. Because when it does, That silence, the one they now live with, is louder than any argument you could have had. Here's the part most people miss: the aftermath. What happens after you've delivered the consequence, after the silence has settled, after the distance has been drawn? That's where the real power lies, because cruelty, when done right, isn't followed by guilt. It's followed by stillness. No checking in to see how they're feeling. No second guessing. No secret hope that they'll come running back with apologies. That's not power. That's performance, and people can tell. They know when your punishment was real and when it was just a dramatic pause, waiting for someone to say, "Come back, I've learned." But if you truly follow Machiavelli's law, there's no invitation to return. There's only a rebirth of you. You rebuild, but you don't soften. That's the trap most people fall into. They punish someone, they draw the line, and then they get lonely. They start missing the way things used to be. So they open the door again, just a little. A smile here, a message there, a crack in the wall, and just like that, the entire structure collapses. Because if you let someone believe the old you still exists, the one who was always available, always forgiving, they'll return to being the version of themselves that took advantage in the first place. That's why cruelty must create a permanent shift, a version of you they can't recognize, one they can't predict, one they can't manipulate. That version, it listens more, speaks less, doesn't react, doesn't explain. It lets the silence speak for itself. And that silence, it stings more than any insult. It says, "I've changed, and you no longer have access to the person I used to be. You don't apologize for this. You don't explain it. You don't justify it. You reinforce it." Because cruelty loses its edge the moment you try to make people understand it. The second you say, "I did this because," you've already given away the power. You've invited them back into the conversation. But Machiavelli would tell you, power needs no explanation. If someone disrespected you and you walked away, you owe them nothing. You don't owe them closure. You don't owe them a speech. You owe them distance. You owe them a silence so absolute, they're left to sit with their own confusion. And to the rest of the world, you owe even less. Let them guess why you've changed. Let them speculate. Let them whisper. Because the truth is, people respect boundaries more when they don't know exactly where they are. When they realize they're not entitled to access. When they feel that chill in your presence and can't quite name what caused it. That's when they start treating you differently. You're not just someone they knew. You've become a version they fear losing again. And that's the final piece Machiavelli understood. Finality. True cruelty doesn't explode. It ends fully, quietly, completely. You don't yell. You don't threaten. You don't seek revenge. You simply stop, and that ending, that calm, controlled ending, it says more than 1,000 angry words ever could. It says, you don't matter enough to hurt anymore. That's what real power looks like. Not control over others, but freedom from them. You don't need to win them back. You don't need to fix the relationship. You don't even need them to understand. Because what comes after cruelty isn't reconciliation. It's evolution. The lesson isn't for them. It's for you. If they turned your kindness into weakness, then your evolution is justice. And you make that justice felt in how you carry yourself from that point on. Colder, sharper, untouchable. People will say, you've changed, and they'll be right. Because if your kindness was taken for granted, if your patience was tested, if your silence was misinterpreted as fear, then you don't owe anyone the old version of you. You owe yourself protection. That's what Machiavelli meant when he said, "He who enables another to become powerful ruins himself." You don't let people who hurt you hold that kind of influence again, ever. So when you go quiet, stay quiet. Don't re-engage. Don't circle back. Don't post cryptic messages hoping they'll reach out. Let your absence speak louder than your presence ever did. Let them feel what it's like to live without you. Let the silence echo. Because if they betrayed your kindness, they shouldn't get to experience your recovery. That's not cruelty, it's clarity. And the more time passes, the more they'll feel it. Not just in their ego, but in their everyday. In the way no one else brings the same energy. In the way other people don't listen like you did. In the way their world feels a little less safe, a little less whole because your gravity isn't there anymore. And as they sit in that loss, something even more brutal starts to happen. They begin to imagine you giving your kindness to someone else. Someone who appreciates it. Someone who earns it. Someone who sees your silence and treats it with care, not as an opening to exploit, but as a boundary to honor. That thought, it cuts deeper than anything you could have said. Because now they're not just hunted by your absence, they're hunted by your replacement. This is the brilliance of necessary cruelty. It doesn't just hurt. It humbles. It says, "I'm not punishing you because I hate you. I'm protecting myself because I finally see you and the secret." You never have to say this out loud. You don't tell them how they messed up. You don't walk them through your pain. You don't let them rewrite the narrative. You just let them live with the voice in their head. Because that voice, that memory, that loop hit becomes the true punishment. Every time they wonder if it could have gone differently. Every time they replay what they missed. Every time they realize how much they misunderstood the warning signs. And in that spiral, you become unforgettable. That's the legacy Machiavelli left us with. Cruelty not as revenge, but as a lesson, as a turning point, as a mirror that forces people to finally see themselves. Because in a world where people only respect pressure, not principle, kindness alone isn't enough. But kindness followed by cruelty, that becomes legendary. It says, "I was good to you. You chose this. Now live with it." And when they whisper about how you've changed, when they say you're not who you used to be, smile. Say nothing. Because they're right. You are not soft anymore. You're steel. And they'll never get close enough to test it again.